NFL Week 17 is not even close to being in the books. We still have a ways to go. Saturday, we're recording right now, just a little bit before Saturday afternoon NFL action kicks off at 1 o'clock between the Chargers and the Patriots. If you would like to know what Jim had to say about the Saturday games, there's a video, of course, here on the channel. But then again, if you're watching this video, it might be too late anyway. So just keep that in mind. We're always making sure that we are prepared in case we can't get to certain games. And that's why you have to subscribe here to Proline TV. What you waiting for? All right. So actually, what we're going to do, we're going to spend the next half hour recapping Thursday night's thriller between Seattle and Chicago.
We can't spend half an hour on that game, please.
Wow. I mean, if that would have been like a different head coach, I might have actually bet against Seattle. And I kind of thought, well, but this kid, he's doing a good job, and he's going to know that the team's going to be down, and he's got to get him up, because when you don't control your destiny anymore after losing 2 straight late in the season, your confidence goes. So, but still, he had to be furious at his team with the way that they responded in that game, because I think the only other team Seattle could have beat this year besides Chicago is probably the Giants, maybe Jacksonville, Tennessee, but not many teams Seattle could have beaten on Thursday night. So
Seattle's not a very good team. They're okay at times, but we have 10 teams in the league that, if you go back a decade, the 10 teams that I'm talking about at the bottom wouldn't even be in the league. They would have to be like a sub-league, because they don't belong.
That's parity for you.
And then you got this Caleb Williams, which we did see again. And of the 4 or 5 rookie quarterbacks, right now I rank him last.
Absolutely. I mean, we couldn't have warned people any clearer over at our lads about our feelings on Jaden Daniels over Caleb Williams. I mean, it was a slam dunk all across the board. There was no debate on who the top quarterback was, and it was Jaden Daniels. But you know what? They got suckered into the whole Heisman and USC, and everybody looks at him, because again, the average Joe doesn't know. But it's your job to know, and screw the average Joe if they don't like the fact that everybody thinks you should be drafting Caleb Williams and it's the obvious choice. Just if you actually think Caleb Williams is the better quarterback, and I don't know what you're thinking, then that guy should be fired. The general manager should be fired.
Well, didn't they do the same thing with Manziel? He was.
Well, that was Cleveland. Yeah, Cleveland.
Yeah, Cleveland always makes mistakes.
Well, we have seen it before. I mean, look at Ryan Leaf. Remember, everybody thought way back in the day when it was Ryan Leaf against Peyton Manning, it was so close. It could have been 50-50. And look what happened to both of their careers. It wasn't even close. So it just shows you it's not an exact science. Every GM and scout is different. There's all reasons why. Now, look, maybe this is why I think they have to fire the GM. But the other reason is just like as a Jet fan myself, and I've complained so much about the fact that all they do is hire defensive coaches, and yet they have a problem developing young quarterbacks. Well, hire an offensive coach so you can groom a good young quarterback. Well, that's what the Bears have to do now that they have Caleb Williams. They must go out and hire. I don't care. I'm not a big Cliff Kingsbury fan, but I'd rather hire him than a bunch of other coaches, because I know that he would have a good chance of developing Caleb Williams over a lot of other guys. And that's the most important thing, is developing Caleb Williams. It's more important than them winning football games. It's developing Caleb Williams.
I can't argue with that. I mean, there are quarterback camps too. I mean, that these young men can attend in the off season that can develop them. And I don't know that he has or hasn't done that. So, but right now, I mean, he got 7 sacks the other day, and the thing is, if he doesn't see the first read,
yeah,
he doesn't know what the hell to do.
And he was such a runner all over the place, which he was able to do in college, which we knew he wouldn't be able to do in the pros. The writing was on the wall. So this is no surprise. But this is, again, why you could say what you want about, because a lot of this is also luck, as we know. If Caleb Williams gets drafted by Andy Reid, okay? I mean, now look, Andy Reid wouldn't be dumb enough to start him right away. He would do what he probably did with Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes, and he even sat Patrick, the best quarterback in football, sat for like 15 games in his first year. So if he can sit for 15 games, I think guys like Caleb Williams can, especially when they don't have a good team in front of them. Kansas City was a good team, and he still sat Patrick Mahomes. Caleb Williams got nothing in front of him, and you're throwing him out. That's why Sam Darnold failed.
So you think about it, though. You're dealing with 32 professional teams. It's hard to find 32 quality head coaches, quality offensive coaches, quality defensive coaches, quality quarterback coaches, quality line coaches. I mean, it's hard to find a left tackle, a right tackle, a guard. I mean, there's a lot of players that need to be found, and they're not always out there.
And unfortunately, the league right now is in a situation where the best quarterback is with the best combination of coaches in the league. And after what we saw on Christmas, I mean, I'm sorry, Jim, but this is how I felt last year at playoff time. The whole season, I was with everybody. Oh, yeah, the Chiefs. No, it's not their year. Yeah, it's not their year. Yeah, I don't see it. And then all of a sudden, there was just something about the fact that everybody was against them and they were an underdog. And I was like, you know what? As an underdog, I'm going to take my chances with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Now, they're not an underdog this year, but you're still getting 4-1 on them to win the Super Bowl, which I tell you right now, I think is a pretty good wager.
There is no question with Spagnuolo and Reid and Mahomes, you have the nucleus to win the third Super Bowl. However, they do have injury issues, and there are other teams. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with Hurts in Philadelphia, but with the concussion and all that. But Buffalo's a threat.
Aren't you a little concerned with Buffalo's defense?
Pardon?
Aren't you a little bit concerned with Buffalo's defense?
It depends on who they meet up with.
With the Chiefs. I would say it's Buffalo with the Chiefs.
I would be very concerned with anybody they meet up with that could run the ball very well. Philadelphia being especially the biggest problem. Oh. And then of course, the offensive line for the Lions, even though they have injuries everywhere, but most of that's on defense. They did lose their running back, but the Buffalo's defense against the run is a serious issue. They do have a quarterback that can make a lot of differences.
Yeah.
And that can make up for a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
And a lot of inefficiencies in other areas, but this is not an easy path for the Chiefs, but they definitely, I mean, at the beginning of the season, I said it was going to be the Chiefs against the Lions. It very well could be the Chiefs against the Lions.
Sure.
I mean, it's not out of the question. But I will say this, that Minnesota's a real threat. The Packers are a real threat. I mean, not other than the Bears, that division is very tough. That whole division, top to bottom. The West Coast, there's nothing out there this year. Philadelphia is, I mean, there's 16. The thing about this is that we just watched 3 games, which is six teams. 2 teams scored more than 10 points. 2. Yeah. I mean, what the hell is going on?
Well, now, it does look like there's only 7 teams that can win the Super Bowl. You got Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore in the AFC.
Yeah.
And you have Detroit, Philly, Minnesota, Green Bay in the NFC. That would be
okay. That's 7. Okay.
Can't put Pittsburgh in there right now. Not the way they're playing. So I think that's about it.
No. Pittsburgh has 0 chance.
Yeah.
0.
No.
With Russell Wilson, they always, and I don't mean to tell this joke, but it is. I have to do it. They used to say, "Let Russ cook." It's time to cook Russ.
Well, That's going to be an interesting decision at the end of the year
No,
because they have to keep one of them.
Well, they can't keep him. I mean, first of all, they're not really paying him.
No,
Remember
they're not
that.
paying either of them.
Denver is paying him.
Sure. Well, that's the thing. They have to decide now to pay Wilson or Fields.
Oh, they can't pay him. I mean, that's ridiculous. He cannot win in this league anymore. Yeah. He can't.
Either way, Pittsburgh is just in the same boat, I believe, like everybody else. Now, look, maybe they'll go ahead and sign Fields, and I'll give him a shot to develop him. But even if they sign Fields, they still have to go out there and get another guy. But the problem is there's a lot of teams out there that have to try quarterbacks. And
there just isn't enough.
No, there's not, unfortunately. No.
Now, in the end, the NBA has an advantage. When they can't find good enough players that know how to play proper basketball, they go to Europe and they find them over there. Well, they can't do that in the NFL because they don't play this game over there. So
it was like that guy that we were talking on the Playbook show the other day, and we were talking a little bit about, I forget why we were talking about basketball for a little bit, and I think it was Andy that brought up, or Tony that brought up that guy who had that monster game at the Garden for the Spurs, who scored 42 points. And it's like, I remember reading about it, I think maybe in the Coffee Club email, and I'm like, I don't even know who this guy is. I can't even pronounce his name. Who is this guy? I mean, did he go to college? If he did, he probably went for a year, or he was on some team I never even watched play. So it's like, that's the NBA nowadays. But yeah, you don't have that luxury in the NFL. Some of it's their own fault for not putting together a developmental league. It's just, I don't think
everything about the NFL is about greed. I mean, it's been that way for a long time. It's all about greed. They first of all, if they're going to 18 games, they should be expanding the rosters. That's number one. Number two, they should have a developmental league. They're not doing the things that's giving the public a quality product, because right now we don't have a quality product except for the 7 teams that you mentioned.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the other thing is, and it's not going to change, because once you go down that road, it's very hard to go back, and that is the limit on practices during training camp, during the summer. The way that you can't communicate with these kids at certain time, that you can't get into a room with them after you draft them. You have to wait a certain time. You only get you get a week, and then once the week is over, you can't call the guy. You have to stay away, all that kind of stuff. And you wonder why it's taking so long to develop guys like Sam Darnold and so forth, because they can't do it because of there's just no time. They don't have time to practice, and don't have time to communicate with coaches. And this is the way the NFL wants it. Or again, this is the way the player union wanted it. And NFL didn't want this. This is the player union. We know why it's too tough. You can't kill these guys. Now, look, we all know we shouldn't be doing it like the Junction Boys. Nobody's saying they should have practice like the Junction Boys. But there's a fine line difference between.
I don't know who the Junction Boys are.
Oh, you never saw that? That was an ESPN.
I don't know what that is.
That was a ESPN movie on Bear Bryant when he was a coach of the Texas A&M Aggies before he became the coach of Alabama. He got his job at Texas A&M. I think he came from Kentucky, and he saw that his team was no good, and he was like, "Well, we got to do whatever we can to get rid of. I'm going to kill these guys. I'm going to take these guys to a place called Junction, whatever." And it was like a desert with pine needles and all sorts of things that they practiced on, dirt, and he killed them. He killed them with 3 a days because he wanted to weed out the kids that just they couldn't take it. And so he went into camp with 100 kids and he left with 10 or 15. and he even admitted it afterwards that it was he went too far. He went overboard. But they have this relationship now where they have this reunion because how special it was for the kids who survived it. And it was a really good movie. It was an ESPN movie, but Tom Berenger played Bear Bryant. And he did a really good job. So if you get the chance, check out Junction Boys, ESPN.
I will do that.
And you'll like it. But again, that's the point, is that you have these the pussification of the NFL nowadays, where nope, okay, we can't do this, we can't do that because you're going to kill these guys, and because a select few wind up getting injured or they can't take it, the entire league has to go into, again, I don't want to keep using that word, but the way that the league is nowadays, which is just soft, and that's why we don't see great football anymore. Okay. Today, again, those games, just keep in mind, the Chargers win, they clinch a playoff berth. And again, you did the video already. I don't know I don't think you took the game, though. Did you take the total in that game, Jim?
I like the over in the first two games.
And
I've checked the weather. There's a couple good reports out there on weather. There's definitely going to be moisture in the east today. Now, it could get worse tomorrow, and it kind of looks in some spots it might. But for today's games, we have two games that are playing outdoors, and that's in Cincinnati and in New England. And both of them look like they're going to have rain. But the wind is not significant. And when you're playing totals, the wind is the most significant issue, unless, of course, you have ice all over the field. But we're not going to have that. So I don't believe the weather is going to have much of an impact. So I do believe that Drake May is going to be able to move the ball and score. And I don't think that New England's going to stop the Chargers much. So I like both games to go over the total.
All right. Well, as far as the game itself, again, if the Chargers win, they clinch. The line I see has gone up. I'm not sure why, but it has moved up. I saw it go up to as much as 6. Is that possible? I think I saw it around 4.5 most of the week.
It was 6, but it dropped back off to 10 or 5.5h now.
Okay. So
I'm gonna look one more time right here.
And again, chances are.
Excuse me. No, it bounced back up to 6.
Okay. Well, again, by the time anybody watches this, it's already on.
FanDuel's at 5.5. Yeah, and everybody else is 6. That's the only one at 5.5.
Now, the games that you might be able to catch after you watch this video are the games later today. That is the 4:30 game between Denver and Cincinnati. The line, I know on my sports book, the line actually dropped to 3, but that was yesterday.
It's an equal amount of 3.5.
Okay. And again, Denver's just like the Chargers. If Denver and the Chargers win, they both clinch the playoff spots. And then that means the AFC is done. We all know who are the 7 teams in the playoffs in the AFC. But if Cincinnati wins, it opens up the door and it keeps alive Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and Miami. Of course, Indianapolis would have to win their remaining 2. Same with Miami, and Cincinnati would have to beat Pittsburgh. And then the hardest one of all is Denver would have to lose to Kansas City next week with them sewn up, the number 1 seed. But as we talked about the other day, I don't look at this as last year with Baltimore and Huntley, because I think Kansas City would stand a much better chance of beating Denver when you've got a situation where Carson Wentz is going to get his chance to play football, still with a lot of starters. You can't sit everybody. So there'll be a decent amount of starters out there. And Andy Reid, he's on the sidelines and he's auditioning for a job. Okay, Carson Wentz is saying, here's my shot. Look at what happens if I have a good coach and sign me. Let me be a starting quarterback next year in the NFL. So that won't be so easy for Denver, but it's still something that Denver will have a little bit of an edge going in. So, but first things first, Cincinnati has to beat Denver. And as we said the other day, Jim, Cincinnati hasn't beaten a winning team all season.
They have a terrible defense. They're on the defensive side of the ball. They're as bad as anybody. The offense, I would argue that with Burrow, Higgins, Chase, and Brown, they're as good as anybody. You can't stop them. And they're going to get their 30 points.
Yeah, Higgins big surprise, is questionable today. So we'll find out whether or not he's going to be able to get in there and play.
Who's that?
Higgins.
Yeah,
So
from what I'm reading this morning, he is.
yeah,
But then that can change.
yeah, he's a walking questionable. I don't know. I mean, someone's going to pay him money next year, but
Well, you got a walking questionable with Richardson in Indianapolis.
yeah, well, we'll get to that one. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
going to be important. Meanwhile, in the game tonight, now again, same thing. And I do appreciate what the NFL has done this year. They've been a lot more liberal with their moving games, even from Sunday to Saturday, which is what they've done here. It's great that all three of these games mean something, because in the past they would never have done this. We would have been watching crappy games on a Saturday just because they didn't want to move them. But they moved them. And so the game tonight is going to be very important. If the Rams win, they are in the playoffs. They win the NFC West. If they lose, it's the Rams in Seattle next week for the NFC West crown. But that's up to Arizona. Now, it looks like James Conner is going to play, though. So that's good news for Seattle and Arizona. Well, more for Seattle than Arizona, actually.
Well, Conner has been questionable all week. And they do say he's going to give it a go. How he holds up, nobody knows. But
because Benson doesn't look too good.
Without him, that would be devastating. And by the way, what is that line?
6.5, I believe.
See, that the question with him playing, that line should actually be going down, and it's not. It's actually going up. It's 6.5 minus 15, which means it's like maybe almost
close
6.
Yeah,
it's going towards 6-7.
Yep.
And this game, you got to remember, opened at 4, and Conner is extremely important to this team. Without him, they're running. I mean, they also lost the other guy, Benson, I think. And so
he's questionable, but not as it doesn't look good for him.
I don't understand why the line would go up with him being announced as now questionable instead of out. That's an interesting. I can't quite figure that out at the moment. I'll have to dig into that.
Well, yeah. I mean, who knows? It's if you do your homework, if you know some things, it's possible you can tell the barometer of a team. How are they practicing? What's the mood like? All that kind of stuff. I mean, we know that good information. It costs money, but you can get a hold of it. And I'm not saying that's happening here. I'm just saying you never know. The Rams, of course, have revenge on their side because they lost to LA week 2. And I remember that because I had the Rams in that game.
They got destroyed in that game.
Absolutely. I thought the Rams were going to win that game after losing week 1. And they got beat up 41-10. And look, this is another example. And and next year, there's going to be a lot of 0-2 teams. You don't give up on the season. The Rams lost their second game of the season, 41-10, and went 0-2. And right now, they're in the position to win the division. So who would have thought that in the division with the defending NFC champions?
Well, that division actually fell apart, though.
It did, but that's what I'm saying. You never know what's going to happen.
It's the whole division went in the toilet.
Yep.
I mean, like we're gonna have Houston, a division winner, hosting a game against a team with a much better record, which is absolutely insane.
Wow.
Where the NFL has designed this stuff. But I mean, and the way Houston's playing, I mean, they did score. You got to give them credit, though. They scored 2 points in their last game.
Yeah, that was something that I think the Steelers are going to be concerned about.
That's right on par with the Bears.
Well, the Steelers are going to end up being the favorite in that game, aren't they?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
What do you think? 2.5?
Where's this? This is
Houston. Steelers at Houston. I'm talking about the playoff game.
Steelers at Houston.
Yeah, because that's going to be the matchup.
Well, you can't make it any more than that. You'd have to make it. It's
2.5, something like that.
I'd say 2, okay. 1.5, 2.
Now, there's still time for that to be different because the Steelers lead the Chargers and the Broncos by half a game. But as of right now, that's the matchup. And by the way, that's the other thing, too, to keep in mind for next week. is the Chargers and the Broncos. Let's just say they both win, and now everybody's clinched. But all of a sudden now you've got Houston, the Chargers, and the Broncos all tied. And the winner that can get to the 5th seed gets Houston. They're going to be playing football next week. They're going to try to get that Houston game. They don't want to go play Baltimore. They don't want to go play Buffalo. They want to play Houston. So they're all 3 of those teams, Pittsburgh, the Chargers, and Denver, will all be playing to win in week 17.
Excellent point. Yeah. Excellent.
All right.
Well, at least thank God for something, because these the 18th week is always difficult when everybody's sitting. It's like sometimes it's like preseason. Yes. You just don't know what the hell to do. But with that kind of incentive, you could get.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
None of those guys. No, they're not sitting any of them. No way. They're all.
So anyway, guys, we have some games to talk about.
Oh, by the way, let's just wrap up the Saturday injury reports before we move on to Sunday. Just want to remind everybody too about the Chargers Patriots, even though it's probably too late. Dobbins is going to be a big injury there too to keep an eye on, because Gus Edwards looks like he's not going to play, but it looks like Dobbins might have a chance to play, Jim. So
when I read this morning, he is not.
Okay. Well,
as a matter of fact, the word was he was put on the list.
I would not play him either. I think the Chargers should be able to beat New England without him.
No, I think from what I read, he's officially on the IR. He's done.
No. Dobbins came off the IR.
Well,
you're talking about Gus Edwards?
No, Dobbins. What I read this morning, and I don't know that it's accurate. I didn't write these memos. I didn't get the inside of. I just read what I read. I don't think there's any chance he's playing. But based on what I read.
Okay.
I wouldn't.
But he is. Oh, just keep in mind, he is off of IR from what I know. It's just that, like you said, we don't know if he's going to play.
Well, I think maybe you might have better information than me on that part. That's
okay.
Possible.
But again, that's a game that is probably already going on if you're watching this video. But the game later on, as I mentioned, T. Higgins may or may not play. Also, the tackle, Mims, is also in a situation where he may or may not play. He's questionable. The game tonight, we told you about the injury situation. It looks like Connor, even though he's questionable, looks better to play. Now let's go ahead and talk about the games on Sunday. We're going to start, first of all, in no particular order. You mentioned Indianapolis, so let's start with that one, Jim. This is, if you're a Colts fan, are you happy about this news? Oh, I lost Jim. I was surfing and reading some information, and Jim left my screen. So hopefully he'll pop back in here in a couple of seconds. Anyway, so yeah, that is something to keep in mind for the game coming up.
If Richardson,
you dropped off, Jim.
Can you not hear me?
Now I can, but whatever you said before, you have to start over again.
If Steichen starts, if he calls the same game plan as he did last week, with Richardson running and not throwing and only threw 11 passes, but that's going to require Richardson to be okay to do that physically. So the question now is he? If you go to Flacco, you know you're going to get more passing. You still got Taylor, but you also are playing a high school team in the Giants, which is why I question how much credit we're giving to the Falcons and the new quarterback there for their win last week, because when you beat up the Giants, who are you beating? And I got to question that. So these all trip over. You know, if my high school team could beat the Giants. So, and believe me,
that's why if you're a Colts fan, wouldn't you prefer Flacco?
You don't even need to be a Colts fan. You just need to be an anti-Giant fan. It's that bad. If you're an anti-Giant fan, you're going to be a Colt fan.
Okay, sure. I think that in this situation, it's definitely better for the Colts to have Flacco, because Richardson is still such a wild card. He could do dumb things that could just give the Giants field position that they don't deserve. So I remember what you said though about that, because I agreed with you, and I still agree with you that Richardson needs to be playing the way he played in the game against Tennessee. But look at the result; he got banged up. And this is
is the problem about him even being a quarterback. I mean,
Yep.
he's prone to getting hurt, and he can't throw a pass that accurately under 20 yards.
And that's a big problem. Yep.
Yeah.
Because Josh Allen, that kid is amazing. I mean, he constantly puts his body in harm's way, and guy never gets hurt. I mean, he has a wrist injury deal that he's always an issue, but his body, his lower body, I mean, the amount of impact that guy takes, and he just keeps getting up. So, but that's why Josh Allen's special. Okay. So what do you think about the game? It's 7.5. The Colts, by the way, how about this? They're 1-9 against the spread after they score 35 or more points. But the Giants have lost 11 straight, 1-10 ATS, last 11. You can't possibly, anybody that would even possibly think of taking the Giants the way this thing is going, there's just so many better things you can be doing, I guess. This is just so bad.
There's only one side to play, and you just have to hope both teams show up and do what they normally do. I mean, the Giants are not even trying to win. Yeah,
Daboll needs to go. I unless there's something behind the scenes that we are not privy to, like you have said before, maybe there is some inner tanking going on where the coach.
Well, there's no question
where the coach is simpatico with the GM and the head coach. Yeah. That all right, I got my job though, right? If I do this, I've got my job. So that's the only thing. Okay. Speaking of Buffalo, now Buffalo for the first time, I don't know if they've done it there. You have to check, but I noticed a 10.
All right. Let me tell you a little bit about this game. There's two places where the weather looks atrocious.
Okay.
Buffalo and Cleveland.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, first of all, Cleveland doesn't have a quarterback in DTR. I mean, he doesn't.
Is he really starting again?
Yes. He doesn't belong in the league.
No,
and who's Buffalo? Who's Cleveland playing? Miami. Who doesn't like to play in cold weather, and it's freezing there. Okay.
That's
so now, guess what? Under. It's going under. They're not going to score.
Okay, so
this one here, the Jets. I'm taking 10 with the Jets. In that kind of weather, Buffalo doesn't have anything to play for. Why would they risk everybody in a game that's meaningless? Now, I'm not saying the Jets are going to go out there and be a ball of fire either, but you got to, if you're looking at a game that's going to be in bad weather, potentially an underplay, you have to look at the possibility there's going to be a lot of conservative play, and you're not going to see a lot of attempting to really score a lot of points. So,
yeah,
I'd have to say the Jets and under, and definitely Cleveland under.
Yeah, the line.
And you might. I mean, some people would actually take the Browns because of the way Miami plays in cold weather. But I'm not betting the Browns. Excuse me. I'm not doing that.
Wait a second. I didn't notice. I did notice the. No, I don't see. Well, I guess this is all. No, from my weather forecast here says, just like you said, as far as it's going to be rainy, it's going to be 22-mile-an-hour winds, but the high though is 62.
Doesn't matter. The wind.
No, I'm just saying, but for
the wind.
No. That's what I'm saying with the cold. I wouldn't. We can't put that in with the cold, but you're absolutely right with the wind. That's why I would stay. There's no way I could go with Cleveland with the points or the money line. I love your under play though there because the Dolphins, they can run the football.
Listen to this. A bunch of, and I'm talking about a bunch of Cleveland players have come out and said, unless you come up with a game plan to show that you're going to try to win football games in the future, we do not want to play here. And I don't blame them. They have one career, limited number of years. I want to win. And if you're not going to at least put a team on the field, you're going to start at Deshaun Watson, who should be probably in jail.
Well, they're not going to start Deshaun Watson. He's not playing for them anymore.
They're still paying him.
They are, but he's not playing for them anymore. Matter of fact, he restructured his contract.
Who they're going to play?
Well, that's the question. Yeah. I mean, it's either they got to bring in Winston again or for another year, because they're going to have to look for a quarterback too. That's what we said with Pittsburgh. All these teams need young quarterbacks.
You know where the
Cleveland's one of
values,
them.
you know where the value is going to be? Guys like Cooper Rush and guys like that, because these backup quarterbacks on other teams are going to get, if they're free, if they're not under contract, they're going to get some big tickets because there's nothing coming out of college.
No, not right away. If you take a kid in college, you're developing them. And so it's not a quick fix.
And there's not that much that's rated very highly this year.
No, there's not. The only guy that has a chance to start like opening day, which again, I think is a wrong move anyway, is Sanders. It's the only guy that has a chance to start opening day in 2025. Other than that, you're going to have to develop the kids. When I was talking to my Cleveland guy with the interview I did, he was talking about guys that fit the head coach's, the type of quarterbacks that he likes to work with. And he talked, because we talked about the whole Watson thing and what was wrong with the offense. And that's why he brought Dorsey in, and Dorsey was going to work with Watson, that whole thing about, we're going to work together. And that's why he was willing to go ahead and bring this marriage in, because Watson's game didn't fit Stefanski's model for a quarterback. No, so I said to him, who does? And he gave me some examples. And one guy he gave an example of is Kirk Cousins. So don't be surprised.
Well, Kirk Cousins washed up, and there's something wrong with his arm.
I'm just telling you.
I mean, why would you even bring him in? They just benched him in Atlanta because he can't throw the ball.
The best thing that could come out for Kirk Cousins is that when the season's over, that he admits that I had this thing, it was hurting me all year. I'm going to have an operation on it, and I'm going to fix it, and I'm going to be good to go for next season.
He's also, but Greg, he's not a young guy.
I wouldn't want him. I'm just telling you.
He's an older quarterback.
I know. And that's why a lot of these older quarterbacks are still hanging in there, because there's not enough good young quarterbacks.
It's not enough replacements.
Yeah. All right. So, by the way, I mentioned that 10 with Buffalo for this reason. I saw this in last week's Coffee Club email, Mark's Coffee Club email. This was last week. The Buffalo Bills 0-9 against the spread in their last 9 as double-digit favorites. And what happened last week? They won by 3. 0-10. So again, it's 10 right now. But here's another thing. Both of the division home games this year for the Buffalo Bills were won by just 3 points each. They beat the Dolphins by 3. They beat the Patriots by 3. So this is the Jets coming in for the first time all season as a heavy dog. Okay, next up, let's talk about some other. There's only a few other games of note that matter. Of course, you got Tampa Bay and Carolina, also a 1:00 game.
That means a lot. That's a big game.
Yep, huge game for the Bucks, who sit right now as the 9 seed. But all that needs to happen is for them to beat Carolina and for Washington to beat Atlanta, and they are back in the driver's seat heading into next week when they host the Saints. Panthers have a pulse, as we know. Saints, no pulse. Panthers, pulse. So this is the game for Tampa Bay. If they're going to have a shot, this is the one that they're going to have to get by. Carolina's 6 straight as a dog, winning 3 out of those 6.
Let me give you this note that just popped up on my screen. The Georgia quarterback Beck is declaring for the draft.
Okay. Well,
then that gives you another quarterback going into the NFL.
Yeah. And again, he probably
that's a smart move, because he's going to get drafted because there's not that many. It's a smart move.
Oh, I mean, where I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he'd be considered a first round guy, but yeah, he'll be in this draft. He'll be one of the top guys. So, you might as well do it, especially after the injury.
He's going to have the elbow surgery, and then he's going to go in the draft.
And I did the interview with both the Georgia Insider and the Ohio State Insider. They're already running on the RLAD site. We'll have condensed clips here on Proline in the next couple of days. But I did try to find out as much as I could about Gunnar Stockton, the new quarterback at Georgia. So, I mean, and the more I heard it, even though he was actually being very, and he's a Georgia guy, he was being very positive. But when I was talking to him, I started to, I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, anything can happen, but that's asking an awful lot for that kid to come off the bench, and throw him into the wolves like that. All right. So the other key game, of course, on the flip side of that for that division is Atlanta. With Atlanta now, is that line down to 3.5?
It is, and it's moved to it's the late game on Sunday.
Yep.
3.5 and 46 at the moment. This is where you have at this point, after 15 games, Daniels is a professional NFL quarterback. One game against the New York Giants. I'm not saying the young man doesn't have talent, but he has not been in the battle except against one of the weakest, probably the weakest team in the NFL. One game, and this is his first road start in a very meaningful game. I know that they've come in, the money has come in. They've taken the 4 points with Atlanta. I just don't trust it. I don't trust it at all. I haven't seen enough.
I hear you. Especially now, this is going to be very important. I mean, I think it is. Tony didn't seem to care, but that every handicapper is different. Everybody who bets on these games is different. But if Tampa Bay wins, then this game matters for Washington. If they lose, Washington is in the playoffs, and really they're playing for nothing. So I would wait for the result of the Tampa Bay game before I would want to bet on Washington. And I would think, wouldn't you think that line would drop if Tampa Bay loses and Washington clinches a playoff berth? And Washington doesn't have to play for
it'll probably go. It might even go down to under 3. It could. But I don't think Tampa Bay is going to lose.
I don't think so either.
But I do think it could be a very competitive game the way the Panthers have been trying so hard.
Yep.
And that's they're playing hard, but the problem is Tampa Bay is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
They're thin at certain positions, but they're pretty damn good. And I think they're going to pull the game out. I don't think it's going to be a rout. So I think it's competitive, but I think Tampa Bay will win, and Washington will need to win this game. And I just don't know. I mean, yes, I was impressed with Atlanta. I was impressed with the quarterback, but I also have to remember that they played the Giants.
Yeah, it's completely different. And then he's going to be on national TV in his second career start. Everybody watching him.
Prime time.
It's just it's a lot to ask. And it is Dan Quinn going up against his former team with an opportunity to squash their hopes. And anytime the former coach can do that to the owner who fired him, he's gonna want to do it.
He deserved to be fired after blowing a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. Come on, he should have been fired that game. He should have been fired before they got to the bus.
He doesn't think that, but yeah. Okay, so also we've got the big matchup with Green Bay and Minnesota, and has that line now moved back to Minnesota?
Yes. Everybody's got Minnesota the favorite now, 1.5. The total has come from, it's 48.5, 49. But Minnesota's now 1.5 point favorite. It's been both ways all week.
Okay. Maybe it's possible that when we did our show the other day, that just the right people, we had to remind them that the Packers were playing basically for nothing, which is really what the game is. Packers are playing for nothing. Minnesota still has a shot to win the division. They still have a chance.
I haven't understood this line all week. I don't understand why a team that's 13-2 is not favored by more than
at home.
And at one point, they were an underdog. I don't get it.
And they're at home. And they beat them already this year on the road.
I know Green Bay is good. I know they're good. I know they've been hot. But they beat the Saints last week with their backup of everybody. And Come on. I mean, this Minnesota should be at least 2.5, 3 in this game. At least.
And this is very important. When we talk about what we believe the line should be is completely different about what the result could be. So we definitely understand Green Bay can win this game, but it's all about the line. That's what we're hitting home. So I don't want anybody out there thinking, well, if they think Minnesota should be fair, I'm putting all my money on Minnesota. That's not exactly what we're saying.
Let's play a little game. Let's say there's no point spreads in football and every game's a money line game, just like in baseball. Okay? Who do you favor? Who is the money line favorite in this game?
Well, it should be Minnesota.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm not going to bet Green Bay Packers because I can get 1 or 1.5.
Well, do you think
that's not an advantageous EV bet?
I brought this up on the show, and I guess maybe I didn't make my point enough when I brought it up again, and I said maybe it's the same again, wise guys or whatever that are moved the line with Green Bay in the Seattle game. Because remember, we were wondering, why is Green Bay a favorite by 2.5 over Seattle at home? Everything Seattle's done, so forth and so on. And the reason I brought it up is because remember how we were talking about the Jets all season? And is there something going on with the Packers recently where there's a lot of money going in with the Packers? That maybe they fit this model.
People fall in love with certain teams, and they lost the fortune with the Jets doing it all year.
Yep. Now they're not losing money with the Packers, but
no, the Packers on the opposite side. They're winning money for them.
By the way, the Packers 16-8 in the last 24 as a true road dog. They've won 5 out of 6. They've covered 5 straight. Minnesota's won 8 straight, 5-2-1 ATS last 8. All right. Dallas at Philly. Bad news for anybody who liked the Cowboys, including me. I'm still going to put money on. I'm still throwing a few bucks on the money line, but no CeeDee Lamb. So CeeDee Lamb is done.
And probably no Hurts.
No Hurts. He's officially done. It's Pickett and no Lamb.
There's no choice but to bet the dog. No question. No question.
You're still getting what? 6.5, 7?
Yeah. 7.5 right now.
7.5. Cowboys.
There's no way you can't bet the dog in this spot. Now, granted, CeeDee Lamb is important, but the Dallas is playing hard.
Yeah.
They're playing for the respect. They definitely want to end up with a winning record. Philadelphia's going in the playoffs, so they can look ahead to that. They can look ahead to being healthy and in the playoffs. Maybe they've blown the chance to get the number 1 seed with the loss last week. And Hurts is now. Come on, I mean, you got to like getting over a touchdown with Dallas, even if CeeDee Lamb, and he's an important player because they don't have that much. But they got enough, and if they come with passion, I like Dallas. Yes.
But by the way, this is another opportunity. We just talked about Wentz. This is a big opportunity for Kenny Pickett. Pickett's going to get an opportunity to showcase himself. He's a young quarterback. I like Kenny Pickett, but Kenny Pickett is another quarterback that just needs time to develop. Now, what I like about Pickett is he played a lot of college football. He's one of these. He was a true freshman starter for Pitt and played all the way through. So he has a lot of experience, and I followed him in college, and he really did a great job. And Pittsburgh was a relevant ACC competitive team with him at quarterback. But he was thrown into the wolves with the Steelers, probably a little bit too early. I don't think he was a disaster, but look, I'm not sure he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. I think he'll be a very good backup.
But the thing is with the Steelers, that's a terrible franchise for any quarterback to go to. They never develop a good quarterback. I mean, Roethlisberger came out of the MAC and did a good job there, but I mean, they are not a great franchise for developing quarterbacks.
Yeah, they did get lucky there. They had one good run with Roethlisberger and Bradshaw. Those were their runs.
But that goes back to the Chuck Noll era.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Who was the other one? Remember they made the Super Bowl against Dallas? Who was their quarterback? Who was that quarterback they had? He actually went to the Jets like a couple of years after that. O'Donnell. Is that his name? Neil O'Donnell?
Yes.
Yes. So that was their quarterback, and they made the Super Bowl with him. So that just shows you how great a franchise Pittsburgh is. They can make Super Bowls with guys like that. That
Well,
was
they had
some.
Bradshaw, O'Donnell, and Roethlisberger. They all did pretty good there, but that was not the Tomlin generation.
No. Well, Roethlisberger was, but no, not.
Yeah.
Not. I mean, because and since Roethlisberger, it's only been a few years, but since Roethlisberger, man, there have been some really bad ones that they have thrown in there.
Roethlisberger was a monster in college. I mean, he was a great player in college as well.
Yep, he was a big boy.
Big boy.
All right, now a couple of trends here to keep an eye on. They're conflicting. Cowboys are 13-2 against the spread as dogs of 7 or more when they take on an opponent off of a straight up loss. So it's 13-2. And the Eagles are 0-13 against the spread as a home favorite when they're coming off of a straight up loss versus a division opponent. And they're in a revenge situation, which the Cowboys are in, because Philadelphia won 34-6, November 10th, and this is the trend that conflicts it. Is that this is the side of the Eagles, the favorite in the series, 7-0 straight up and against the spread in the last 7. Okay, so that leaves us with the Monday night game, Detroit and San Francisco, and that line is not budged. That's 3.5 all week. And Detroit has covered. This is one of those weird ones that I think is just kind of luck in my mind. But just if you really care about all of them, they've covered 6 straight before they play Minnesota, and they covered earlier this year before Minnesota. I love those little Mark Lawrence playbook trends that you sometimes you go to specific trends you just play, and sometimes you don't. But at least they're there for your choosing. Detroit can clinch home field with a win and a Green Bay win. So if the Packers beat Minnesota, Detroit can clinch home field with a win. San Francisco 1-5 straight up ATS last 6. What do you think?
Well, San Francisco hasn't had any health luck all year. Even starting in the preseason with the players were asking for contracts, wanted to be traded. Then, CMC only played like 2 games out of the whole year. The offensive line, they got Trent Williams is now gone, probably never play again. He had the tragedy in his life with the baby and then other injuries. I mean, San Francisco's been a mess all year, and it's very bad luck. You talk about the Super Bowl losing jinx, and boy, they had it. And the Lions have been, for me, they've been the best team in football all year until they started to get the defensive injuries. They're still a quality football team, and right now the Niners are not. So it's pretty easy to me to say that this is the Lions are going to win this football game.
Yeah, and especially if Green Bay wins, and they need the win to clinch home field throughout the playoffs. That'll be huge.
You look at that. You look at the coach. You think that coach is going to go in there and let them be soft?
No, especially don't forget that
guy is going to drive them. They're going to play.
And remember, this is a revenge game. This is the team they lost to in a championship game last year. So they're not going into this game because, again, even if Green Bay loses, they still need to keep going for home field. But Dan Campbell, 12-3 against the spread off of any straight up and double-digit spread win. 12-3 ATS all time. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up. And we are going to let everybody enjoy the rest of the weekend. Again, you got games on later today. You got the games on Sunday and that Monday night game in San Francisco. We're going to be back on Monday. So we'll be back before the Detroit game to wrap up everything that took place over the weekend here on our next show. And then, again, we're back with our Playbook ATS show on Thursday again. So, again, we're back to Thursdays just for a couple of weeks. Not sure if we're going to have Mark back next Thursday. It might be he'll be out for one more week. But, we've been really having a good time. We had a good time on Thursday. the five of us. So that was a long show. That was a 2 hour and 50. That almost beat the show that we did with Andy. Almost. So that's a lot of content. And that's why you want to subscribe here, because even if you're still watching the shows over at Playbook, the Playbook website, Playbook Experts, keep in mind it's just an edited down version. The entire show, all 2 hours and 15 minutes, is available only here at Proline TV. Jim, appreciate it as always. Have a great weekend.
You too. Everybody.